That building right there, look at the heels. They sell the allure of sex. And then people come here looking for sex, and they spend $5.5 million every year throwing our peers in jail for the same exact thing that we do. Umbrellas, I want to see that sexy red.
Underground no more in rallies across
to get
Canada.
that Canada out of the dark ages.
They deserve the same rights and dignity as other workers. I consider it a job like any other job.
According to the Open Society Foundation's 2019, sex work is defined as the trade of sexual services, performances, or products in exchange for monetary compensation, which includes both direct physical contact between buyers and sellers, as well as indirect sexual stimulation. The use of the word indirect in the following definition is arguably the most relevant within our generation today. This is because, as technology has advanced and social media has grown in popularity, the Western concept of sex work has evolved from brothels and street work prostitution to now having an alternative opportunity to make a profit from the comfort of your own home. As a result, although men and women have been exploiting their bodies for income for centuries, various forms of sex work have also arisen over time. In the modern sex industry, this includes stripping, pornography and adult films, webcam models, phone sex companies, and prostitution. The earliest stories of sex work in New Zealand date back to the early days of European colonization in the 18th century, when select Pākehā sailors and whalers exchanged muskets and other items for sex with Māori women. Due to the societal perception that all who participated in prostitution carried venereal diseases, acts such as the Contagious Diseases Act 1869 and the Police Offences Act 1884 required women suspected of prostitution to be examined, locked up, and treated, and made it illegal to offer sex for money in a public place. In 1987, the NZPC, also known as the New Zealand Prostitutes Collective, was founded to advocate for the rights of prostitutes in the midst of HIV and AIDS concerns. As a result, the government intervened by sponsoring this to promote the use of condoms within the industry. Following the 1990s, there has been a drive to amend the prostitution law, because although being a sex worker was not illegal, it was still, however, illegal to run a brothel, live off money made from prostitution, or even offer sex in public for money. Because of the stigma associated with it, it was still difficult to recognize sex labor as just another job without prejudice or bias. As a result, following years of advocacy, sex work was ultimately decriminalized in New Zealand in 2003. The sex industry has and still includes many transgender people, typically because they cannot find work elsewhere. Prior to the decriminalization of sex work, workers were governed by concerns of cruelty and inequity perpetrated by the police and prosecutors, requiring them to disguise their identities at all times, depriving them of full autonomy over their lives.
For decriminalisation, sex workers had to duck and hide. You couldn't tell people what you were doing. It was very difficult to have things like condoms. You know, everyone worried about carrying condoms. Even basic information about sex work and sharing ideas was problematic for some people.
This is because prosecutors have used condom possession as proof of prostitution in many cases. Because condoms were classified as contraband, sex workers were forced to choose between protecting their health and avoiding police harassment and arrest. This not only contradicted the essence of authorities such as the police and what their job is supposed to do, which is to protect our communities and citizens' physical and mental well-being, but it also clashed with Sections 9 and 19 of New Zealand's Bill of Rights Act, which states that people have the right not to be subjected to torture or cruel treatment, as well as the freedom from discrimination, as being labelled a sex worker isn't a characteristic. It's a job, just like any other, and it comes with the good days and bad. As a result of the PRA, sex workers are now protected from unlawful treatment by authorities whose objective was to punish them as criminals for attempting to make a living. Consequently, the influence of this contributed to the goal of reducing prejudices in this industry by restoring the rights of these workers. From an intercultural stance that prioritizes being grounded in one's identity and rejects discrimination, this somehow restores pride in being a worker in this business because, when it was illegal, they had no voice and were made to feel cheap and used.
But now I sort of got a lot more rights as a worker, which is very empowering in a way that I know that I have the rights to work or not work. And should I work, I know that I have the rights as every other person who's employed as well. So it's made it a lot easier in that sense for me.
It helps to ensure that they have the same rights as other people in employment, in criminal law, in civil law.
Decriminalization has also contributed to the concept of identity by allowing these individuals to come out and communicate openly to their networks about the truth of their profession, rather than having to keep this portion of their existence in the shadows.
Being in a decriminalised environment and other factors to do with the social circle I'm part of and things like that have meant that it's been reasonably easy for me to be out. And it's really important for me to be out, I think, for two reasons. So the first reason I came out was because I just found it extremely isolating, having to, keep a really important and often quite exciting part of my life secret, and also just tiring. I mean, having to sort of pretend to be doing another job or pretending to not be doing anything, it was just sort of, I found that really stressful.
Through this, we can see that through contact with others, information accumulates, helping to define who you are and where you belong.
There's a pretty important role to play in challenging people's perceptions of sex work and of who sex workers are.
It's not what the person is, because it's what the person does for a living. So it is work. I could have been a farm worker or an au pair or a domestic worker, but then I chose to do sex work because it's something that would have given me more money than what I would have earned as a farm worker. So it is still a choice, but under the limited choices that one would have had.
Decriminalization has also paved the path for discrimination to be addressed.
Sex workers, like anybody else, should be afforded the same human rights as everybody else everywhere. The right to work safely and the right to work in the jobs they want to do. They should be allowed to make the choice for themselves without other people telling them they're criminals.
Sex workers are a part of society, not apart from society, and it's important that they have access to all kinds of services, all kinds of organisations, without fearing that their health and safety and their general well-being and parts of their life are going to be disrupted, and that they can actually go about their business, about their life, about their work in the same way that anyone else can.
Traditional Māori views on sex work in Aotearoa. The traditional Māori perspective on sex work is complicated and complex since it differs depending on the tribe or iwi in the historical era. Due to the diversity of Māori culture, individuals and groups may have different views on sex work and other social concerns. Māori society historically had its own systems of social organizations and practices that included varied types of sexual expression before European colonists arrived. The idea of sex labor, as it is known in modern times, did not exist in ancient Māori society. Polygamy, concubinage, and arranged marriages were all common sexual relationships in Māori society. Early European immigrants historically took advantage of Māori women for sex, which was viewed as threatening Māori traditional norms. While some people would consider sex labor to be a legitimate sort of employment, others might consider it to be damaging to women and predatory, exploiting females. The Māori community has opposed the New Zealand government's efforts to decriminalise sex work and regulate the business. Some support decriminalisation as a means of promoting the safety and well-being of sex workers, while others contend that it contradicts Māori traditional values and promotes negative stereotypes about Māori women. Relating to the Māori values of mana means the authority, power, or status of an individual. Mana is frequently used as an alternative term for status or someone with mana has a presence. Mana was inherited, but people may also gain, use up, or lose it through their activities. Particularly rangatira, chiefs, understood the need of maintaining a high mana level. The Māori values go against the rights of sex workers because having the status of a sex worker can bring shame to one's family, as the mana should be kept and protected at a high expectation or level. Due to the diversity and ongoing evolution of Māori society, the conflict between traditional Māori ideals and sex work might differ between individuals and communities. Whakapapa means genealogy, the interconnectedness of individuals with their ancestors and descendants, family tree or bloodline. Sex work may be perceived as possibly undercutting the value of establishing solid whakapapa ties and developing healthy long-term relationships, especially when it is connected to casual encounters or transactional relationships. Mana means the authority, power, or status of an individual. Some people could think that participating in sex work diminishes one's mana or the mana of the community. This viewpoint could be influenced by the idea that sex work entails the commodification of personal connections and perhaps leads to the objectification of those involved. Tapu means sacredness of something or someone, a spiritual restriction. Sex and sexuality were traditionally regarded as tapu and were governed by certain cultural standards. Sex work itself may not be fundamentally tapu, but if it is considered as departing from accepted norms of culture, it may conflict with traditional tapu expectations surrounding sexuality.
So, as a kid, I knew from a very young age what my identity was. But growing up in a typical, hard out, brawn Māori family, I just feel like I couldn't exercise that right. I always knew that I was feminine, more feminine than, the boys. I just wanted to be with the girls when I was in kura. Being in the family where we have the stern Māori father, and my mother just always worked to support us kids and to look after us kids. And I was the youngest of three brothers. So imagine being that and identifying as trans later on, It brings a lot of shame to our whakapapa. When I discovered sex work, obviously being shunned by my family and, kind of being singled out, sex work gave me an opportunity. After being shunned and singled out by my family, I had to find somewhere where I felt accepted, and sex work was that for me. It allowed me to embrace being a whakawahine, a very proud one at that, especially being that my dad was a Māori chief. Having worked in those fields, obviously people won't accept it, so I have to learn to accept myself. So even with that, I felt I was kind of at a dilemma, if you would say, because on the other hand, me exercising how I feel and my identity, I was also bringing down my father's mana and bringing shame to him because being what I am, it's just not really accepted. But then on the other side, if I wasn't true to myself, I wouldn't be able to be where I am right now, advocating and talking and helping people realize that sex work is just a job. And typically speaking, because obviously I am of Māori descent, tapu is a very important thing to us. That again was compromised when I wanted to do what I'm doing now.
Although sex labour or sex work clashes with the traditional Māori values due to cultural norms and principles, it doesn't mean an individual is less or looked down upon. Everyone has mana. Mana comes in different forms. Mana can be tested but also needs to be respected. Mana is a part of your identity and it is something that is earned or passed down. Through this video, the value of mana is explained and broken down.
The word is mana. Everyone in this room has some form of mana. Your mana comes from knowing who you are, where you come from, and your connection to your land, whenua. Mana grounds you. Mana makes you solid. Mana roots you to your past, present, and future. We don't always have to agree. Mana can be tested, even challenged, but with respect and an understanding of one another's mana.
OnlyFans and the internet. Sex work was usually a silent profession, something not talked about frequently and seen as taboo in most cultures. This is still true today, but with the rise of platforms such as OnlyFans and live streaming services, sex work has become normalised, if not glamorised. With platforms like OnlyFans, Discord and Patreon becoming more popular and widespread, the glamorisation of sex work has become a viral phenomenon. The online platform OnlyFans allows creators to post content hidden by a paywall. Although it is used by musicians and fitness experts, it rose to popularity in 2019-2020 when many porn actresses flooded to the site. OnlyFans allows sex workers the freedom to choose what and when they post and who has access to it. OnlyFans is a great platform for sex workers, but it has its problems. For example, in August of 2020, child star and actress Bella Thorne posted highly edited photos to her Instagram, announcing that she would be selling her nude photos on OnlyFans for roughly $200 each. Bella Thorne was estimated to have earned over $1 million on the first day of her site going public. While she received thousands of orders, buyers never received the nude photos. This prompted OnlyFans to put a limit on how much one can charge for a subscription. This meant that established sex workers who used OnlyFans for their main source of income had limits on how much they could earn. This sparked debate over the topic of digital gentrification and fear that celebrities would push OnlyFans creators out of a job. The allure of working from home and setting their own prices meant that roughly 450,000 people became creators on OnlyFans. Seeing sex workers make over $10,000 a month on OnlyFans prompted a whole new group of young people becoming interested in sex work. This is dangerous because young people can get involved in sex work without knowing the consequences. 19 fired up stilettos. A topic of discussion that has become more popular amongst sex workers is sex workers' rights. Focusing on strippers' rights, they have become fed up. The Instagram account @19firedupstilettos, a Wellington-based organisation, has been documenting their personal experience with managers and other employees and the customers in the strip club. These 19 women have been unfairly terminated or treated badly at the Wellington Calendar Girls strip club. They have faced issues such as wage cuts and wage thefts, unfair suspension, intimidation and bullying, union busting, and unsafe work conditions. These women tell their stories through their Instagram accounts and news articles. Strippers are usually independent contractors rather than employees. Their contracts include clauses barring them from providing services to competing clubs. A spokesperson for Fired Up Stilettos says that their strip clubs have a history of terminating contracts when asked for a higher pay cut. These women have spoken out and hosted many protests in front of Parliament. Some solutions that have been proposed are legislative reform to protect sex workers from abuse, unfair pay cuts, and exploitation from.
Overall, this indicates how difficult the topic is and why it is an intercultural dilemma, because it entails moral and ethical considerations. On one end of the scale, even if it is still regarded as a social evil, one must ask, when will we contemplate treating these people as regular humans? Because at the end of the day, they are simply ordinary people attempting to make a living on their own terms. They are not less or more because they opted to do this instead of working a 9-to-5 job in an office or retail. As a result, we are forced to make decisions based on our own prejudices, rather than considering these people's backgrounds.